Good morning, friends. Welcome to Coffee Talk. We are coffeeless in our Coffee Talk, and so please forgive us for that. But we're just here hanging out with our hands in our pockets with no coffee. We're glad you're joining us this morning. And Jeff, welcome back. Glad you're here.
Yeah, good to be back.
Glad you can be back in the mix again, and hopefully you had some nice sunny days.
Yeah, it was great. Half of my week was working inside, and then the other half was working outside, and so it was great to be outside.
And Jeff, you described your week off with a phrase I didn't know you knew. Like, I was shocked to learn that you have this in your vocabulary, this phrase, sleeping in.
Oh, yeah.
You had shared with us, so it's really good to hear that you are rested. And
Oh, yeah, it was great.
Back at it.
Yeah. It's not super late, but at least it's later than I normally sleep, so yeah, it was nice.
We're not clocking it. That's good.
You know what? Sometimes you just need a couple of days, just a couple of days.
Yeah,
So
it was good. Yeah.
we're glad you had that time. And so looking back, you had a great week, a great week off. So welcome back.
Thank you.
Chris, this last week, you led us through this story of Naaman, which I thought is an amazing story because often we don't quickly reference it here on, in our adult portion of the service. But like you said, sometimes you will reference it down there, or kids get to go through it down there, and I just find that very interesting. That there's some stories that we quickly will connect with here, but we assume everybody's kind of grown up with it or something like that.
Absolutely. It's one of the pages that our kids who were in the service had was right out of the curriculum from that we use that has it as a lesson within it. I actually decided to bring that here because, earlier in the week, like Monday, I was flipping through that children's Bible that we had just given to all the families that dedicated children the day before, and I was just going through, I'm refreshing myself, what stories are in here? And all of a sudden, that one just jumped out at me. I'm like, that is such a good story because you've got in there someone who, God basically heals the enemy of Israel, the guy causing all kinds of problem for them, and you just think, wait, God, that's out of bounds. You shouldn't be doing that. But yet God's like, no, this is what I'm going to do. Jesus references the story when he talks about how, he's not really fully accepted by his peers in Nazareth, right? And he talks about how, even in the days of Elijah and Elisha, God did this, and it was all to reference how God's going outside of Israel to bring people in. And I thought this is a pivotal, or not a pivotal, but it's a really important story for us to be familiar with.
Yeah.
So I thought let's bring it.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not even. I felt like it's not one of those quick and easy, straightforward stories.
No.
Like sometimes what we hear or we assume down the hall with the kids, where there was a guy, he had an issue, he trusted in God. God healed him, end of story, have a great afternoon, right? What I found very amazing and interesting about this story was that, like you said, there was something really different to it where God is actually working outside of what we kind of assume is normal, or maybe what we expect, right? We expect God to do this, or we expect God to, do these amazing things in the people of Israel, but it doesn't really fit with our framework sometimes when he works outside of that. I don't know if you guys, have had experiences like that where you assumed God was going to work in this little structure, and then he works outside of it in a very different way.
Oh, yeah.
Have you had experiences like that?
I think it's one of those things we expect God to do, right? If we look back at Scripture, we see that he does it again and again and again. But I will confess, I can't think of one off the top of my head in my real life. But maybe it's because I think I have a certain sense of, if I want God to work in such and such a way all the time consistently, I know that's just going to lead to disappointment. So I've tried to avoid putting God in a box for the last 30 years, so to speak. But I think it's an important question for us to wrestle with, Kevin, and I'm glad you ask it. But maybe Jeff, you have some more insight in there than I,
Well,
at the moment can come with.
Yeah, I immediately start to think of, we often ask God to heal someone, right? And we know he can, but he will often allow that pain And then years later, or months later, we'll look back and say, oh, that's what he was doing, right? And I think
Yeah.
that might be outside of what you're saying, but it's sort of inside, because we sort of expect that now. But it's also, if you look at the Bible, it's like he healed them.
Yeah.
But we don't see that often. So maybe it's unexpected when he actually does heal somebody. And we do know those stories too. So those are some things that come to mind immediately, because I've had a lot of those experiences in my own life and watching people. But you seem to be struggling with that a little bit.
Well, a little bit. I think because part of the tradition I grew up in actually expects God not to heal people.
Yeah.
We pray because the Bible tells us to do so, but there's zero, and in fact, the expectation is, God, you're not going to do anything. So we always hedge it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, we go, okay, God, we know you can, which is code for, I don't actually think you will. And that's something I think we should be challenged on. Why don't we, when other Christian traditions actually do? But,
Yeah.
that's maybe some of the baggage working through these days.
Yeah.
Well, and I think either way, whatever we're expecting, when it doesn't go that way, is answer to the question. How does it
Yeah.
work outside our expectations? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about healing, that's a great example. I think maybe one of the ways it does come up is a little bit is some of the people that God calls to himself, where we can kind of go, really? That guy?
Yeah. Yep.
And that's, I guess, if I'm going to say where God's surprised me the most, it's usually in terms of that. The one kid in youth group you think is not paying attention, is like
Yeah.
totally zoned out, then brings an insightful comment.
And
you're
they
like,
become the youth pastor, or the pastor of
Yeah.
the next
Maybe.
generation.
Yeah,
right?
maybe.
Often we hear about that, right?
Yeah, right. And so,
Yeah.
as I think through in terms of not acts that God has done, but people that God has used,
Yeah.
when I think through it that way, actually,
Yeah.
then there's a lot of kind of surprises,
Yeah.
Oh,
the
that's-
people who just
yeah.
wander in here and you're like, okay, this person is totally lost. And then they start talking, you're like, oh, they might understand more of God than I do, and
No, I
things
think
like
that's really good. Like sometimes I am challenged by somebody that I'm like, they don't. And then really, I think it's right along the lines. I'm like, wait a second, I can't. If I do what you said in the sermon, don't ignore the unnamed, right?
Yeah.
So this person that I was chastised by or something, if I'm just like, you look at your life, whatever, and if I'm return it, then I miss out what actually, when I think about it, is actually what they said. There's truth in there, and I need to take it to heart. I don't know if I said that clearly, but
No.
yeah.
I think you're right. Expect the unexpected, and I think that's also why. And this is jumping way into a different box, but that's also why people were really blown away. Why Jesus didn't go to the very center of civilization. Why Jesus was not born in a palace. Why Jesus would often go to people that just society had kind of pushed aside, and said, "Those aren't the important people. Jesus, go and meet with this person, and then we'll have a good, successful ministry." And Jesus said, actually, I'm going to start here, so that the meek and the humble and those who have been forgiven much, the people who are very unexpected, they are going to change the world. Because it's also possible that, like in this story, those who actually should have understood, they don't get it. And Jesus is kind of just, using all this energy in vain to try and connect this story to people who maybe just have too much pride. They have ears to hear but cannot perceive, right? And I think that's just what I do love about God, that expect the unexpected, but also that drives me a little bit nuts when we want to just have a straight
we
idea.
have our way in mind, and he has a different way.
Even like people or situations throughout the day, that God is saying, no, we're going to take a left turn right here, and you are going to be amazed when we go there, but you weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
And I think, thanks God for that.
I mean, that story is beautiful in so many ways. I really love that you pointed out the unnamed people, like The servant girl was the one that said, hey, this is, and so he went.
Yeah.
And then he was all mad, and I love that part where he's like, the servant said, if you were asked to do some great thing, like, that's hugely challenging to me a lot of times. Like, sometimes I have this lofty thing. I want to be this big, and I keep being reminded of this, that what Naaman was reminded. You're trying to do this great big thing, but God's telling you to do this.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing, and that's what will bring the most healing, the most benefit. And that's such a beautiful moment in that story. That you pointed out, it's about our heart, like Naaman, his heart was wrong. And then when it was transformed, even when he went to Elisha and said, hey, I have to go and do this, Elisha saw his heart, go in peace, right? And there's just so many great things. It's amazing you got through it and however long you did, because there's way more, so much to it.
Well, and we cut the end of the story off because you've got the counterpart to Naaman, right? Whose heart was transformed and headed off to do something really, like, we expect great things of Naaman going forward, but then you've got kind of the way, Elisha's
servant,
number two, his like Gehazi, his protege kind of guy, just goes
You talked
the other
about
way.
that, though.
Yeah, but not in any way that
depth,
gave
but
it justice, right?
Yeah.
And so,
But that contrast between the guy whose heart should have been right, that's so often we see that. We've seen it again and again in these stories that we've, gone through in Mark and in, I think in Taste of the Kingdom. No, not Taste of the Kingdom. There was another place that, the series we just got done, Divine Assignments. We saw that. Yeah.
again and again, right? That God calls the people you least expect, and the people who should be in turn out, they're out.
And to do great things and small things. Like, you imagine the effect that this had even on that servant girl, to say, all it took was just a small word of like, I think you should go, right? And it wasn't anything miraculous, but it was faith-filled, and it was a tool that the power of God used in Naaman's life, and just amazing. So hopefully you continue reflecting on those things and expect the unexpected from God. That He's gonna walk with you, in every path. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. Right? But that doesn't mean all of our path is going to be for sure lit up all the way down. We got plan A to B all the way to the end of our life, that we know exactly where God is headed. It's a constant trust. That's why it goes back to verse 5, right? Trust in the Lord. So continue talking about these and thinking on them, and we're going to look forward to something new this coming Sunday. So Jeff, we have special guests this Sunday. Can you tell us who's coming this Sunday?
It's called Hope Road Gospel Choir. And our friend Dell, who you see on stage with us sometimes playing flutes and saxophones, and I don't know, he got guitars, he plays pretty much everything. Kind of like you, you play a lot. Once in a while you get on the piano. And anyways, he has a choir that he's trying to bless a few different churches in the Okanagan. So they've already performed at Summerland Baptist. Now they're coming to our church, and then they're going to go to another church. And some of our people are in it, so it's pretty exciting. So they'll be here with us on Sunday and singing with and for us on Sunday. So that's exciting.
Yep. So that's this coming Sunday. It's the 21st, and so we're excited to have them and their whole group. They're going to kind of take up the whole stage, which is also why we turned the camera this way, because everything is kind of changing up on the stage. But that's exciting for this coming week. And then, Chris, can you tell us what's happening the week after?
We have a special guest again, right? And no, but we're gonna
all of April is special.
all of April is special. It's a special month. You got it starts with the Jesus show, Easter, and then it goes. We got the baby show, and then the whatever. Anyways, no, we're just rolling on through. We're going to have a wonderful GAIN representative come and share with us about the ministry that GAIN does around the world, and the little part that Lakeview plays in that by supporting him. And so, a name very familiar to many of you. It is, of course, Lyndon Dojon, who will be here. And then we thought, because we've been loving having Soup you know, about once a month-ish, let's just make that a soup Sunday. And at one point, Kevin, you used a phrase, you know, that it's soup again, which I think is great. And so why not? So come plan to spend the morning with us, hear about Gain, and then share in some soup. And so, yeah, just, I guess, plan not to rush away.
Yeah. And we are looking for some people to help out with that. So if you're able to make a soup or volunteer in the kitchen, we're looking for helpers with that. So thank you in advance for those that do volunteer so often and make all this happen so that the majority of us can just kind of come and gather and sit and enjoy what God is doing and just have some great conversations. So, yeah. We are going to continue looking forward beyond that, but we want to just kind of whet your appetite with what's coming ahead for those things, and blessings on you, and we will see you this Sunday for Hope Road Gospel Choir.